Hello, there is complete reading of Winnie the Pooh. Please lay down to sleep. Let's get down to sleep with Winnie the Pooh by Milne. The introduction, if you happen to have. Read another book about Christopher Robin. You may remember that he once had a swan, or the swan had Christopher Robin, I don't know which, and that he used to call this swan Pooh. That was a long time ago. And when we said goodbye, we took the name with us, as we didn't think the swan would want it any more. Well, when Edward Bear said that he would like an exciting name all to himself, to think that he was Winnie the Pooh, and he was, so as I have explained, the Pooh Part 1. Well, now explain the rest of it. You can't be in London for long without going to the zoo. There are some people who begin the zoo at the beginning, called way in, and walk as quickly as they can past every cage until way out. The nicest people go straight to the animal that they love the most, and they stay there. So when Christopher Robin goes to the zoo, he goes to where the polar bears are. He whispers something to the third keeper from the left. Doors unlock it, and we wander through dark passages and up steep stair until at last we come to the special cage, and the cage is opened, and out trots something brown and furry, and with a happy cry of "Oh, bear!" Christopher Robin rushes into its arms. Now this bear's name is Winnie, which shows what a good name for bears it is. But the funny thing is, we can't remember where the Winnie is called after Pooh or Pooh after Winnie. We did know once, but we forgotten. I had written as far as this when Piglet looked up and said in his squeaky voice, "What about me, my dear Piglet?" I said, "The whole book is about you." "So it is about Pooh," he said. "You see what it is, he's jealous because he thinks Pooh is having a grand introduction all to himself, who is the favorite, of course. There is no denying it. But Piglet comes in for a good many things, which Pooh misses because you can't take Pooh to school without everybody can, so small that he slips into a pocket where it is very comforting to feel him, and you're not quite sure whether twice is o'er. Sometimes he slips out and has a good look in the ink pot, and in this way he's got more education than Pooh. But Pooh doesn't mind. Some have brains and some haven't, he says, and there it is. And now all the others are saying what about us, so perhaps the best thing to do is to stop writing introductions and get on with the book. Chapter 1, in which we are introduced to Winnie the Pooh and some bees, and the stories begin. Here is Edward Bear coming downstairs now. Bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs, but sometimes he feels that there really is another way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels that perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom, and ready to be introduced to you, Winnie the Pooh. When I first heard his name, I said, just as you were going to say, that I thought he was a boy. So did I, said Christopher Robin. Then you can't call him Winnie. I don't, but you said he's Winnie the Pooh. Don't you know what there means? Yes, now I do, I said quickly. And I hope you do too, because it's all the explanation that you are going to get sometimes. Winnie the Pooh likes a game of some sort, and sometimes likes to sit quietly in fire and listen to a story. What about a story, said Christopher Robin. What about a story, I said. Could you very sweetly tell Winnie the Pooh one? I suppose I could. I said, what sort of stories does he like about himself? Because he's that sort of bear. I see, so. Coo, I'll try, I said. So I tried. Christopher Robin, "Nah," said a girly voice. "Then I will go on," said I. One day when he was out walking, he came to an open place in the middle of the forest, and in the middle of this place was a large oak tree, and from the top of the tree there came a loud buzzing noise. Winnie the Pooh sat down at the foot of the tree. He put his head between his paws and he began to think. First of all, he said to himself, "That buzzing noise means something. You don't get a buzzing noise like that. Just buzzing and buzzing without its meaning something. If there's a buzzing noise, somebody's making a buzzing noise. And the only reason for making a buzzing noise that I know of is because you're a bee." Then he thought for another long time and said, "And the only reason for being a bee that I know of is making honey," and said, "And the only reason for making honey is so as I can eat it." So he began to climb the tree. He climbed and he climbed and he climbed, and as he climbed he sang a little song to himself, and it went like this: "Isn't it funny how a bear likes honey? Buzz, buzz, buzz. I wonder why he does." Then he climbed a little further and a little further, and then just a little further. By that time he had thought of another song. It's a very funny thought that if birds were bees, they'd build their nests at the bottom of trees. And that being so, if the bees were bears, we shouldn't have to climb up all these stairs. He was getting rather tired by this time, so that's why he sang a complaining song. He was nearly there now, and if he just stood on that branch crack. "Oh, help," said Pooh as he dropped feet on the branch below him. "If only I hadn't," he said, as he bounced feet onto the next branch. "You see what I meant to do," he explained as he turned head over heels and crashed onto another branch feet below. "What I meant to do, of course it was rather," he admitted as he slithered very quickly through the next 6 branches. "It all comes, I suppose," he decided as he said goodbye to the last branch, spun round 3 times, and flew gracefully into a bush. "It all comes of liking honey so much. Oh, help." He crawled out of the bush, brushed the prickles from his nose, and began to think again, and the first person that he thought of was Christopher Robin. "Was that me?" said Christopher Robin in an odd voice, hardly daring to believe it. "That was you?" Christopher Robin said nothing, but his eyes got larger and larger, and his face got pinker and pinker. So Winnie the Pooh went round to his friend Christopher Robin, who lived behind a green door in another part of the forest. "Good morning, Christopher Robin," he said. "Good morning, Winnie the Pooh," said you. "I wonder if you've got such a thing as a balloon about you." "A balloon? Yes, I just said to myself coming along. I wonder if Christopher Robin has such a thing as a balloon about him," he just said to myself, thinking of balloons and wondering. "What do you want a balloon for?" you said. Winnie the Pooh looked round. See that nobody was listening. He put his paw to his mouth and said in a deep whisper, "Honey." "But you don't get honey with balloons." "I do," said Pooh. "Well, it just happened that you had been to a party the day before at the house of your friend Piglet, and you had balloons. At the party you had had a big green balloon, and one of Rabbit's relations had had a big blue one, and had left it behind, being really too young to go to a party at all, and so you had brought the green one and the blue one home with you. Which one would you like?" you asked. Pooh put his head between his paws and thought very carefully. "It's like this," said, "when you go after honey with a balloon, the great thing is not to let the bees know you're coming. Now, if you have a green balloon, they might think you are only part of the tree and not notice you, and if you have a blue balloon, they might think you are only part of the tree and not notice you. And if you have a blue balloon, they might think you were only part of the sky and not notice you. And the question is, which is most likely? Wouldn't they notice you underneath the balloon, you ask? They might, or they might not, said Winnie the Pooh. You never can tell with bees. He thought for a moment and said, I shall try to look like a small black cloud that will deceive them. Then you would better have the blue balloon, you said, until it was dead where you both went out with. The blue balloon, and you took your gun with you just in case, as you always did. And Winnie the Pooh went to a very muddy place that he knew of and rolled, until he was black all over. And when the balloon was blown up as big, and you and Pooh were both holding on to the string, you let go suddenly, and Pooh Bear floated gracefully up into the sky and stayed there level with the top of the tree, and about feet away from it. Hooray, you shouted. Isn't that fine, shouted Winnie the Pooh down to you. What do I look like? You look like a bear holding on to a balloon. You said not, said Pooh, anxious linnet, like a small black cloud in a blue sky. Not very much, well, perhaps from up here it looks different. And as I say, you never can tell with beasts. There was no wind to blow him nearer to the tree, so there he stayed. You could see the honey, he could smell the honey, but he couldn't quite reach the honey. After a little while he called down to you, Christopher Robin, he said in a loud whisper, hello, I think the bees suspect something. Sort of thing, I don't know, something tells me they're suspicious. Perhaps they think you're after their honey. It may be that. You never can tell with bees. There was another little silence. And then he called down to you again, Christopher Robin, yes. Have you an umbrella in your house? I think so. I wish you would bring it out here and walk up and down with it. And look up at me every now and then and say, tap, tap, it looks like rain. I think if you did that it would help the deception which we are practicing on these bees. Well, you laughed to yourself, silly old bear, but you didn't say it aloud, because Hugh was so fond of him. And you went home for your umbrella. Oh, there you are, called down Winnie the Pooh. As soon as you got back to the tree, I was beginning to get anxious. I have discovered that the bees are now definitely suspicious. Shall I put my umbrella up? He said yes, but wait a moment, we must be practical. The important bee to deceive the queen bee. Can you see which is the queen bee from down? You know it pretty well now if you walk up and down with your umbrella. Defacing it looks like rain. I shall do what I can by singing a little cloud song such as a cloud might sing. Okay, go. So while you walked up and down and wondered if it would rain, Winnie the Pooh sang this song. How sweet to be a cloud floating on text in the blue. Every little cloud always sings aloud. How sweet to be a cloud floating in the blue. It makes him very proud to be a little cloud. The bees were still buzzing suspiciously, as ever. Some of them indeed left their nests, flew all round the cloud as it began the second verse of this song. And one bee sat down on the nose of the cloud for a moment, and then got up again. Christopher Robin called out the cloud, yes, I have just been thinking, and I've come to a very important decision. These are the wrong sort of bees. They're quite the wrong sort, so I think they would make the wrong sort of honey, shouldn't you? Would they? Yet, so I think I shall come down. How, I asked you? Winnie the Pooh hadn't thought about this. If he let go of the string, he would fall bump, and he didn't like the idea of that. So he thought for a long time, and then he said, Christopher Robin, you must shoot the balloon with your gun. You've got your gun. Of course I have. You said if I do that it will spoil the balloon. You said But if you don't, said Pooh, I shall have to let go, and that would spoil me. Put it like this, you saw how it was, and you aimed very carefully at the balloon and fired all. Said Pooh. Did I miss, you asked. You didn't exactly miss, said Pooh, but you missed the balloon. I'm so sorry, you said, and you fired again, and this time you hit the balloon and the air came slowly out, and Winnie the Pooh floated down to the ground. His arms were so stiff from holding on to the string of the balloon all that time that they stayed up straight in the air for more than a week. Whenever a fly came and settled on his nose, he had to blow it off. And I think, but I'm not sure, that is why he was always called Pooh. Is that the end of the story? Asked Christopher Robin. Well, that's the end of that one. There are others about Pooh and me and Piglet and Rabbit and all of. You don't you remember? I do remember, and then when I try to remember I forget. That day, and Pooh and Piglet tried to catch the heffalump. They didn't catch it, did they? No, who couldn't, because he hasn't any brain. Did I catch her? Well, that comes into the story. Christopher Robin nodded. I do remember, he said, only Pooh doesn't. Very well, so that's why he likes having it told to him again, because then it's a real story and not just a remembering. That's just how I feel, I said. Christopher Robin gave a deep sigh, picked his bear up by the leg, and walked off to the door, trailing behind him. At the door he turned and said, coming to see me have my bath. I might, I said, I didn't hurt him when I shot him, did I not? A bit. I might, I said, I didn't hurt him when I shot him, did I not? A bit. He nodded and went out, and in a moment I heard Winnie the Pooh bump, 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 going up the stairs behind him. This is the end of this chapter. Thank you.